I went to the reunion place initially, and I became this giant orb of light. And it was emitting from me, and I was just radiating happiness. And then there was a stream of pure white light that came to my crown chakra, and I rode it up. I went up the white light, and then I ended up in the middle of source light, and it was just very bright, and it felt like home, and it was just lovely to be there in the pure white light. And then there was the pyramid, and then there was the beautiful place, which I saw through the filter of being in very, very bright white light. So I could see a lovely meadow and stream and pink flowers, but they looked very light because I was in the middle of so much light, which is interesting because when I see very, very light places, I believe it's very high density. So it's interesting to have the perspective that I was within a ball of light, which is why it looked to me, those were the filters I was looking through, so everything looked very light. And then with the cloud, I saw Jack. He was there, and I touched his hand, but he kind of cheered me on to go on my way. And so I rode on the cloud, and there were a couple little triangle beings and some other beings that I didn't identify, but they came with me as well, and we rode over some land, and then we ended up in a place that seemed like space, and then I was surrounded with the little white portals, the little tiny portals that Glinda would produce out of her wand, but they were surrounding me everywhere. Instead of just showing up in front of me, I was surrounded and immersed in them. And then I started seeing space warp around me. And I was watching space warp around me as if it were being stretched like taffy. And then Anna showed up, and she is a guide who tends to ask questions, and she took my hand, and so it's the two of us where she's with me, and we're both in the middle of a place that looks a bit like space because it's all black, and there are still the little portals of light, and then we're watching space twist and kind of morph just in the shapes that we're seeing. And so that's where we are, and I imagine I'm non-physical if I'm here, but at the same time I'm looking like a young woman, maybe a college age, but older than Anna. And then Ijai is here, so he just came in, and I see Ijai and Anna together quite a bit. They pair up in the roles that they play. So she's now holding his hand, and he has his wand, and I'm going to listen for a moment to see what he is here for. And so I'm going to ask him if he's here to offer a teaching. And he's pointing out the warping of the space and saying it's not as stable as we tend to believe in the lower densities. If you could see with ascended eyes, you would see it curve and warp, that it's not just flat. And it's interesting to watch it kind of, it's almost like water, where, like waves. And he's saying, look how, if you looked at look in one area and look in another area, and you would see them as a certain distance if it was a straight line, but as it moves kind of like a wave, they can, as they move and curve, they can touch. And so there's this constant movement, and he's mentioning, we can think of time this way, where if you're in a lower density and you don't have this view of it moving, then you have a very linear experience of time that feels solid. But as you move up in densities and dimensions, you see more and more of the fluidity of it, and you can use that to move and kind of travel as you would think of traveling to some place. You can travel to some time, some location that would include the element of time, of alternate states of being, and it can be very fluid, and you can see it from this higher space of observation. And that's the key to it also, is from a place of observation, because if you are having an experience where you are existing somewhere, even in a higher density place, let's say you're in a place that's it looks like a landscape, and it looks like maybe a meadow or a forest or a garden, and you're in it and you're having an experience, and it can be really mostly energy, but you don't have the same vision of how things are changeable and movable. If you're in a setting, you may know that that's how it works, and so knowing that and having that understanding will help you easily alter things as you would like to, because you know that that's how it works. You've seen it in action. You know that's how energy works. And so there's no issue with belief systems or limiting beliefs or any kind of resistance, that this is the process, that this is how energy flows and moves and works and can be altered and can be malleable, can be flexible, can be fluid. And it's a delight to work with it in that way. And that all things are possible and available. And it's almost like, feels like music also, that feels very light, and that the music can move in any way, like a light melody, and it feels and looks kind of like how music flows. If music were energy, and it is, but if the energy were music, it flows and it moves and it changes, and it can move in any way. It can move forward in any way. And it's easy. And it's easy, and that's just how it works. And so I'm asking him about the different densities and how the densities affect that, the flow of it, and how easily it moves. And he's showing that as you get into environments that have more matter and more density and are more solid or seemingly solid, then it can move slower. It can slow down. But it's still always moving. It's still always moving. It just, sometimes it can move at a pace that is not always visible to, if you're watching for it. It doesn't always change immediately right before your eyes. And so I'm asking him about the message of be in the place of imagination. And he's saying that's where the change begins. It's where you're asking for the change. It's where you're directing. That's where you're conducting. You're the conductor, and you've got your conducting wand, and you're influencing the flow of the music with the wave of your wand, with your intention, with your thoughts. And where your thoughts are going and leading, then the music follows. And it follows you. And so that is how energy flows, and that is a way to conduct and direct the flow of energy. And so I'm asking for some examples of some of the things that you could direct that way. And so he is showing first a landscape where you can direct a flow of energy that would flow like water through an environment. And everything would be bathed. It would be like bringing a river of water through the environment that you're in, and everything would be bathed in this energy, and it would affect the things that are there. And if things have matter, they may be emitting their own energy. They may have some protection of their own from other influences. But he's saying if you look at it from a higher level, and if you're on the topic of other versions, so other versions of the place, when you are directing energy through a place, you are creating your own version, another version of it. So you could think of it as a timeline, but that's not the verbiage that's being used. It's creating a new version of it, or riding on the wave of the energy that is flowing you through a version that's there. Almost like you're surfing on the energy flow that's with your focused intention. It could feel like surfing on a wave of energy that is being directed towards a certain place or a certain version of an environment or a timeline or a something that may even already be there, since everything exists. You could be flowing into the version that you want to be experiencing. And it is that easy, even in every density, because that's how energy flows. So when you're more focused on being in that place of imagination where you're directing, where you have focused intention and you're directing your thoughts to a certain place, when you're in that state of being, you are by default letting go of current physical reality and allowing yourself simply to flow into the direction that you would like to go. And so the flow is as easy as you allow it to be. And the only hindrance to it are your own thoughts that may be holding you in place to anchor into a certain state, which can be used for your benefit or not, depending on where you would like to go. So if energy was flowing like water, you could think of some of your thoughts as anchoring you into a certain place and staying there if you have thoughts and beliefs that are holding you there. But if you want to change that and go elsewhere, you can simply divert your attention to where you do want to go, and that's being in the place of imagination, and imagine, just for the sake of imagining, what you prefer, what you would like, which direction you would like to go. And you could imagine flowing easily on that current that simply flows to that place, to that version, to that version that also exists. And it truly is that simple, and it does follow this template in all dimensions. And it may seem that it would be easier in the higher dimensions, but yes, it can flow faster and more immediately, but it also seems to flow faster because you know how it works, and so you're not slowing things with limiting thoughts and beliefs, because there's no illusion about it. And so in the place of earth, in the place of forgetting, it is as simple and easy. It does work the same. It's just that you have the thoughts and beliefs that can slow it. And it can slow it so that you can examine. You can examine things. You can examine your own thoughts and your own beliefs. And that can be quite interesting. That can be a very interesting experience to have, is to discover your own thoughts and beliefs. And it is a way of learning about yourself. And that's an opportunity to learn about yourselves in an environment that lends itself to that unique opportunity. And so it feels like if there is a question on the list, that we could ask it.
Okay. Okay, so this one, I'll just see if you have anything more to say about this. Would you talk about the ease of shifting into our timeline of choice? And I think you've kind of already talked about it's a little bit different than a timeline, what you're talking about, but what is an easy way to do that? So people like you answered that.
Yes.
Question.
Yes. And we would say yes, and that it's using a little different terminology of shifting into a different version, but it is the same in meaning.
Okay. And so would you talk about the vastness of possible timelines available to us?
Yes. And so, yes, yes, it is true. More is available than seems even reasonable, meaning more is available than you can even fathom. And as you imagine, even if things don't end up looking the way you're imagining, it will be a vibration match, and it will be different than, it will be something new and different, and maybe even something that you were not even able to imagine. And so we do continue to invite the playfulness of it, to imagine for the fun of imagining, and the joy that it brings, the benefit that it brings, because as you imagine grander and more expansive and different things, that is adding very interesting view for others who are observing. So there are so many onlookers who are interested in what we can conceive of. And so anything that is not challenging, but beyond what you would typically expect or imagine for yourself, once you start playing more and expanding your capacity for imagining, it gets really interesting for everyone. It gets interesting for you, but also for all of your allies and all of your audience members who are watching you and just thinking, ooh, look what she's thinking of now, and cheering you on. And it brings so much brightness, and it's just so interesting. And so it's very much encouraged to follow your joy, follow the things that light up your heart, because also the things that light up your heart are bringing you more into alignment with your true self and your higher self. And so as you are imagining and allowing that to bring you joy, just for the sake of imagining it, as you're feeling into that joy of it, you are more aligned with your higher self and your allies, and the higher vibration places, and the place where your allies are. And so it's a way it's a way of communing with them. It's a way of celebrating with them, and it's a way of aligning with the bright light that's that is accessible to all of us, that we're always connected to, but it's really feeling into it. It's actually a way of feeling into it and coming into alignment with how high vibration and how bright and clear and just how bright that white light is. So your imaginings are almost like a prop or a tool or a method for tuning into that really bright light in that sweet spot where Source lives. And it's a way of just tuning so easily into that powerful light that elevates your vibration so quickly. And so that's what is meant by be in the place of imagination, and be more playful about it, and imagine just for the sake of imagining, because it feels so lovely just to imagine. It's bringing you into alignment with your true self and the light within you and Source light, and raising your vibration. And when that happens, your world shifts. The world that you are experiencing shifts. And so that is another way of explaining how this process works. That as your eyes are, or as you're in the place of imagination and shifting into the light and the joy just for the sake of doing it, you're moving into an alternate version, because you're now in such a higher state of being that matter will follow just by default. So you don't have to. So when it comes to Rose and that example of her household and the dynamics in the household, just shifting into that place of delight, of imagination, and imagining how she would like things to be, and letting go of the current state of physical reality. The more she can let go of that and just be in the place of imagining, it's like putting your foot on the accelerator of shifting and changing things. Because matter follows frequency, the frequency you're in. And so that is how to drive. That's how to be in the driver's seat and being the creator and choosing. And then if something pops up that doesn't match, something happens, someone says something, she's had the experience where she just kind of looked and was completely detached from it, and then it seemed like that wasn't the reality she belonged in. So she could feel detached from it, and then it changed. And that's another thing that Bashar talks about too, is that sometimes he calls it the echo effect, where something will show up like the old version, and when you feel yourself detached from it, it's an opportunity to witness how you have changed, and that you don't belong there anymore in that reality, and that it doesn't fit the vibration you're in, and you are not affected by it. you view it a different way. It's almost like it's showing up in your view and then fading away because you're not anchored into it by any means anymore. And so Rose knows a lot of this, and so is asking for a little help in that detachment of not getting triggered. And because the trigger means that she's still attached in some way.
Right.
And yes, and so we highlight that scenario where she can be the observer and see herself with a glass wall in between what might be happening and where she is, and to practice that, to feel the detachment from it, and to thank it, and to offer gratitude that that scenario's taught her so much, and see the graduation cap on her head, that she's graduated from that perspective of it that she used to have, and she can see herself as a little girl in that scenario that was in fear and anxiety, but now is standing with her safe and just safe and secure now. And they can have a discussion about it if they want to, about how much things have changed since that time. And Rosie even had an experience today that was with different people, but had a very different reaction than she used to, which showed her how much she had changed. With there was a slight triggering from something a coworker said, but she, instead of feeling like a victim and disempowered, she felt very strong. And so that was, and then she examined that as an example of the pendulum swinging a bit, and then also being given a teaching a little bit about what it would look like to be in balance, and that's the whole picture, is going from one state to from the pendulum swinging the other way, and then balancing where you're not really affected by that scenario anymore, but just observing and moving on because it doesn't anchor you into anything. And that is in effect, and that's in process in a good way.